हेलो फ्रेंड्स, सुबह के 7 बज 6:30 हो चुके हैं और मैं थोड़ा लेट हूँ 5-7 मिनट। और जल्द से हम लोग आज का पेपर पढ़ने का कार्यक्रम स्टार्ट कर दें। ऐसी पर्सनल ग्रांटर्स लाइएबल टू कॉर्पोरेट डेब्ट। Nearly 200 cases of black fungus in Delhi hospital. Delhi hospital Satyendra John or Friday said that 197 cases of black fungus have been reported in Delhi, and there was a drugs to treat the infection. In continued COVID-19 patient against taking steroids without the doctor decide as it lowers immunity and increase chances of infection। मतलब लगभग दिल्ली में 2000 केसेस ब्लैक फंगस का पाया गया है। वैक्सीनेट वियर मास्क, ऑसी टेल्स इंडिया। SC grants fail to YSRCP Marayu। Tarun Tejpal acquitted in rape case। थोड़ा हम लोग डीप में देखते हैं।
Tarun Tejpal acquitted in rape case. Former Tahalka editor was accused of raping a colleague in Goa in 2013. Sonam Sehgal, Mumbai. Former Tahalka editor Tarun Tejpal was on Friday acquitted in the 2013 sexual harassment and rape case by the Mapusa District and Sessions Court in Goa. Mr. Tejpal, who was accused of raping a colleague in the elevator of a five-star hotel, was arrested on November 30, 2013, by the Goa Crime Branch. He was granted bail in July 2014 by the Supreme Court. The crime branch filed a 2,846-page charge sheet against him the same year. No journalists allowed. No journalists were allowed inside the court due to COVID-19 protocols, Public Prosecutor Francisco Tavora told The Hindu. Special Judge Kshama Joshi pronounced the judgment. On September 29, 2017, the court framed charges against him under Sections 341, wrongful restraint, 342, wrongful confinement, 354, assault or criminal force with intent to outrage modesty, 354A, sexual harassment, 354B, assault or use of criminal force to woman with intent to disrobe, 376, 2F, person in position of authority over women, committing rape, and 376, 2K, rape by person in position of control, of the Indian Penal Code against him. The trial commenced in March 2018 but got interrupted due to several factors, one of them being Mr. Tejpal seeking a discharge in the case, for which he first moved the Sessions Court, then the High Court and the Supreme Court. In August 2019, the Apex Court declined his plea and ordered that the trial be held in camera, not open for public, and completed in 6 months. The trial finally began on December 7, 2020, and the woman was examined and cross-examined till January 7, 2021, by appearing physically and through video conferencing. The prosecution examined 71 witnesses and the defense had 4 witnesses, including family members of both the accused and the woman. The trial concluded at the end of February 2021 after final arguments and the judgment was reserved. The court was supposed to pronounce the judgment on April 27 but was adjourned to May 12 due to shortage of staff. It was again adjourned to May 19 because of Cyclone Tokti and then to May 21. Mr. Tavora said, "We are seriously aggrieved and state will be assailing the judgment. Thanks lawyers." Mr. Tejpal, in a press statement, thanked the judge and his lawyers, one of whom died of COVID-19. It read, "As a family we owe our advocate Rajiv Gomez a profound and permanent debt. The past 7.5 years have been traumatic for my family as we have dealt with the catastrophic fallout of these false allegations on every aspect of our personal, professional and public lives.
No dodge left for 18 to 44 age group Delhi government. It is like participating in a procession of the dead. A green area to the core is no more. Many inoculation sites remain shut due to vaccine storage.
Many inoculation sites remain shut due to vaccine shortage. Volunteers at few other centers say only those in 45+ category getting jabs. Shinjani Ghosh, New Delhi. A number of inoculation sites across the capital remain shut on Friday due to vaccine shortage. Meanwhile, volunteers at a few other sites said the centers, where people in the 18 to 44 age group were being given the jabs, are now vaccinating only those above 45. Despite vaccination banners and notices put on its gates, Ishani government Sarvodaya Vidyalaya in Saket remained closed for inoculations on Friday. Closed since May 14. A guard at the school said, the school has been shut for vaccination since May 14. There were 4 sites in the school and Covaxin was being administered here for the 18 to 44 age category. However, due to unavailability of vaccines, the sites are closed for over a week now. Delhi government schools across the city, which had been converted into vaccination sites, saw a steady rush of people. With controlled crowds, civil defense volunteers and police personnel in place, these sites paved the way for several people to get vaccinated over the past few weeks. The Gargi government Sarvodaya Girls Senior Secondary School in Sufdarajan Enclave was another site where the vaccination process for the 18 to 44 age category has been discontinued, said police personnel stationed at the gates. Till Thursday, Covishield was administered to people in the 18 to 44 age category. However, on Friday we did not see anyone from this category, probably because there were no slots available. At the 4 sites inside the school, vaccines for the above 45-year category is being administered now. People in this category can walk in directly and do not require prior appointments, a policeman at the school said. Outside one of the government schools in Malvinagar, where the vaccination process for both categories were being conducted, those receiving the shots said they felt relieved to have received at least 1 dose. Waiting outside the government boys senior secondary school in the area, South Delhi resident Gaurav Chauhan said, I am here for my daughter's vaccination process. All these days getting an appointment and a slot was proving to be difficult. However, in the last few days, reports of the shortage of vaccine saw how young people got affected in the second wave, and now I am glad that my daughter will at least get her first dose. Hopefully, the supply chain will normalize soon. Civil defense volunteers present at the school said, the vaccination drive has been going without a hitch in this school. As of Friday, Covishield is being administered to both categories of people, and those above 45 can simply walk in.
इसका मतलब फ्रेंड्स कि ये 18 से 44 एज ग्रुप वाले जो दिल्ली में वैक्सीन है वो अभी ख़त्म हो चुका है. एयरपोर्ट के नो सेशन चार्ज अगेंस्ट डीप एंड 15 अदर बाई SIT.
Red Fort case, no sedition charges against Deep and 15 others by SIT. 3,000-page charge sheet submitted at Tishajari Court on May 17. Saurabh Trivedi, New Delhi. No sedition charges have been mentioned in the charge sheet filed by the Special Investigation Team of Delhi Police against Punjabi actor activist Deep Sidhu and 15 others who were arrested in the Red Fort violence case, said a senior officer on Friday. We have conducted a detailed investigation while preparing the charge sheet. The accused have not been charged under sedition. If more evidence or any new development happens in the case, then they will file supplementary charge sheet in the case, the police officer said. He added that a total 3,000-page charge sheet was submitted on May 17 before the duty magistrate at the Tishajari court. It was the first charge sheet in the violence that happened during farmers' tractor rally on Republic Day across the city. The charge sheet was prepared after going through scores of technical evidence like mobile locations of accused, and their presence was also established with the help of CCTV footage. The forensic report of all evidence has been also submitted in the charge sheet. The main operational part is mentioned in 350 pages, in which the name of the conspirators and how the whole incident happened has been described in detail, said the officer. Lukha Sidana and 6 others are named as absconding accused as they are still on run. All 16 accused have been charged under IPC sections 186, obstructing public servant in discharge of public functions, 353, assault or criminal force to deter public servant from discharge of his duty, 308, attempt to commit culpable homicide, 152, assaulting or obstructing public servant when suppressing riot, etc., 397, robbery or dacoity, with attempt to cause death or grievous hurt, and 307, attempt to murder, as per the charge sheet. Key conspirators. In the charge sheet, the police have mentioned Deep and Lukha as key conspirators, who were acting on behest of farmers' leaders protesting at Singhu, Tikri and Ghazipur border. After January 26 violence, the Delhi police registered 43 cases across the city. The sit constituted by the Delhi Police Crime Branch that was probing the Red Fort incident on Republic Day. Over 150 persons were arrested in connection with the case.
When National Navy were dumping many people on pretext of supplying remedies. Wrestlers death, more public deployed at a stadium. They were held for killing wife in Northwest Delhi. IIT IIT Delhi professor Dinesh Mohan succumbs to COVID-19.
IIT Delhi professor Dinesh Mohan succumbs to COVID-19. He was an expert on traffic management. Special correspondent, New Delhi. Honorary professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Delhi, Dinesh Mohan died on Friday morning due to COVID-19 related complications. Professor Mohan, 75, was the founder of the Transportation Research and Injury Prevention Program, TRIP, and an expert on traffic safety and human tolerance. IIT Delhi Director V. Ram Gopal Rao said Mohan was being treated at St. Stephen's Hospital after he tested positive. Professor Mohan started his career with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety in Washington, D.C., USA, and had since 1976 been with IIT Delhi's Center for Biomedical Engineering and did pioneering work through the establishment of TRIP. He was a recipient of several distinctions and awards, including the Distinguished Alumni Award from IIT Bombay and the University of Delaware, and was on several committees nationally and internationally on traffic safety and injury prevention. Professor Mohan had authored and co-authored several books and articles in scholarly journals on policy related to the safety of individuals and safe designs of passenger vehicles. He was a great humanist and fervent supporter of individual rights. The Delhi Declaration on People's Right to Safety is one such example. He was also a leading columnist and commentator on issues related to the public interest. It is a huge loss for all the faculty, students and staff at TRIP, IIT Delhi, and all those known to him at the Institute and the traffic safety community in India, IIT Delhi said.
Nearly 200 cases of black fungus infection in Delhi. Capital logs 3,009 new cases in 24. Hospital must reserve best for certain categories. साथ संगत गुरुद्वारा a helping hand for patients. Srivastava now full-fledged police chief. Samyukt Kisan Morcha writes to PM to resume talks over laws.
Samyukt Kisan Morcha writes to PM to resume talks over farm laws. There has been no talks between the two sides since January 26. Press Trust of India, New Delhi. The Samyukt Kisan Morcha, SKM, an umbrella body of over 40 protesting farmer unions, on Friday wrote to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, urging resumption of talks over the three farm laws they have been agitating against at Delhi border since November last year. Several rounds of talks between farmers and the government have failed to break the deadlock over the three central legislations. The farmers' body said in a statement on Friday it has again asked the government to reinitiate a dialogue with the protesting farmers. A government panel had met farmer leaders on January 22. There has been no talks between the two sides since January 26 when the tractor rally turned violent. The SKM has written a letter to the Prime Minister, asking for the resumption of talks with farmers. This letter touches upon several aspects of the farmers' movement and the ignorant attitude of the government, the SKM said in the statement. It said that while the farmers do not wish to expose anyone to the health hazards of the pandemic, it cannot also give up on the struggle, as it is a matter of life and death, and also of future generations.
PM provides Rupees 1 crore aid for of school teachers who died of COVID.
CM provides 1 crore aid to kin of school teacher who died of COVID. Wife of Corona warrior to be provided government job, Kejriwal. Special correspondent, New Delhi. Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal on Friday provided financial assistance of 1 crore to the family of Corona warrior Nitin Tanwar, a primary school teacher, who died when performing various duties throughout the pandemic. According to the government, Tanwar was posted at the MC Primary School in West Delhi, Narayana. His wife, Sawista, will be provided employment at a Delhi government school on compassionate grounds, the CM said. Tanwar got infected by COVID-19 in the line of duty on December 12, 2020 and was admitted to the IML hospital, where he died on December 14. He was a resident of Delhi and is survived by his father, mother, wife, daughter and brother. Hardworking, dedicated. Late Nitin Tanwar ji was a very hardworking and dedicated teacher in our Delhi government school. He was posted at various duties during the pandemic crisis. He was initially posted at the ration distribution center, and later on many such duties, the Chief Minister said. He passed away after getting infected while being on COVID duty last year. It is because of people like Nitin ji that Delhi can cope with the pandemic, because these people are fighting a tough battle against the virus. I pray to God that he rests in peace, Mr. Kejriwal added.
AGP accuses up government to reduce testing. Haryana to bear cost of treatment of BPL patient.
Haryana to bear cost of treatment of BPL patients. Focus should now be on post-COVID complications, CM. Special Correspondent Chandigarh. Haryana Chief Minister Manohar Lal announced on Friday that the entire treatment cost of below poverty line (BPL) patients undergoing COVID-19 treatment at private hospitals would be borne by the state government. Earlier, the state government had announced financial assistance of up to 35,000 rupees for BPL patients. All the BPL families who are not covered under Ayushman Bharat scheme will be eligible to get this benefit, and the Deputy Commissioner will ensure that this financial assistance scheme reaches grassroots level, said Mr. Lal. The Chief Minister was chairing the 8th review meeting of COVID-19 management with government officials through video conferencing. He said that while the government and private hospitals of the state were putting up a tough fight against the ongoing second wave of COVID-19, the focus now should be on making adequate arrangements to deal with the patients suffering from post-COVID complications, including keeping a close vigil on mucormycosis, black fungus, cases. The Chief Minister directed the Deputy Commissioner to closely monitor the increase in the cases of mucormycosis. He said at least 20 beds should be reserved for its treatment in all medical colleges. The Deputy Commissioners should ensure that every hospital of their respective districts should share real-time data of the patients suffering from this deadly disease, and the referral for such patients should be made in medical colleges only, Mr. Lal said. Convince farmers. The Chief Minister said Deputy Commissioners should make dedicated efforts to convince the agitating farmers, protesting against centre's farm laws, to cooperate with the government to fight this pandemic. He said he too had urged the farmers to immediately call off their strike, understanding the need of the hour, to ensure that the virus spread chain is broken.
No consensus on selfie leader in Kerala. Pinarayi Vijayan returns home. Vinay Gauraj gets health. Members nominated to Kal Kshetra Board. Cyclone Katei Uddhav hopes Modi will stand by Maharashtra.
Cyclone Taukte, Uddhav hopes Modi will stand by Maharashtra. Relief package to be announced soon, says CM. BJP flays his brief visit to Konkan. Shomajit Banerjee, Pune. Stating that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was a sensitive man, Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray on Friday expressed hope that the PM would stand by Maharashtra, while stressing that the state government would do everything it could to provide succor to the populace of Cyclone Taukte ravaged Konkan. The Chief Minister said that he did not believe in announcing ad hoc packages, and that a relief package would be announced over the next few days once a comprehensive assessment had been carried out in the affected areas. Mr. Thackeray was on a day-long tour to assess damage in Ratnagiri and Sindhudurg districts. Today, I have only come to console those afflicted by the cyclone. While we have already begun giving relief as per the central guidelines, we will announce a package once the panchanamas of the exact damage caused by Cyclone Taukte is completed. This is expected in the next couple of days. All help will be provided, no one will be deprived, the Chief Minister said. The cyclone hit 5 taluks in the Konkan particularly hard, while destroying more than 3,000 hectares of mango, cashew and coconut orchards in these districts, besides other fruits and crops. We have conveyed to the Prime Minister that we, Maharashtra, expects a big package. The PM is a sensitive person, and we hope he will not leave the state in a lurch. The help should be increased. I do not want to politicize the relief issue, he said. Meanwhile, the Chief Minister's brief visit drew criticism from the opposition Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, with leader of opposition in the Legislative Council Praveen Darekar mocking Mr. Thackeray's 3-hour tour and comparing it to a veritable cyclone. The Chief Minister might have taken the review at the Mantralaya in Mumbai itself, instead of holding a review meet at pandals erected at landing zones here. He ought to have visited the afflicted fishermen, fruit growers, farmers, and people of the Konkan, said Mr. Dharekar, who himself is on a tour of the region.
SC disposes of petition Singh Sudha Bharadwaj medical ban. Girl's body found off Palm Beach Road. Question marks over Mumbai monsoon work. ASHA workers demand better amenity to battle pandemic. Trumping major literalism in the Hindi heartland. The AIDS fight over a COVID vaccine patent pathway.
The AIDS fight offers a COVID vaccine patent pathway. There are recognized ways to overcome the patent's hurdle, ensuring social justice and boosting the COVID-19 battle. In order to achieve global herd immunity and prevent new strains of COVID-19 from emerging, possibly for years to come, vaccines need to be affordable and available in massive quantities throughout the globe. This can happen through patent owners voluntarily licensing their products to other companies, especially Indian producers who are experienced at mass-producing low-cost medications. This can also be done by temporarily suspending patent rights for COVID vaccines, an option that is being pursued by India and South Africa through the World Trade Organization, WTO, and one that is legal in the event of a public health emergency, according to that organization's own rules. One way or the other, India and the world need several Indian pharmaceutical companies, not just the Serum Institute of India, to gain the right to make these vaccines if we are going to see an end to this pandemic anytime soon. Turning point in the HIV fight. Decades of struggles over patent rights and access to medications for HIV/AIDS demonstrate that it is possible to navigate patent restrictions using something called voluntary licenses, where a patent holder decides to license a product to other producers. The United Nations Medicines Patent Pool and the World Health Organization's COVID-19 Technology Access Pool are important tools in an effort to promote voluntary licensing for COVID products that so far have been ignored by pharmaceutical producers. Sharing patent rights through voluntary licensing would need to involve India's large pharmaceutical sector, whose production capacity helped make treatments for AIDS more affordable in low-income countries and helped mitigate that pandemic. In the 1990s, the WTO began implementing a global intellectual property regime known as the Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights Agreement, or TRIPS. While TRIPS alarmed public health experts because of its potential to raise the price of essential medicines, voluntary licensing agreements between pharmaceutical producers were able to bring down the price of AIDS medications despite the TRIPS regulations. Responding to anti-TRIPS activism from low-income countries and realizing they would not be able to profit off of low-income markets anyway, some manufacturers placed licensing agreements to produce AIDS drugs for which they own patent rights in the UN-affiliated Medicines Patent Pool. Several India-based companies then used these voluntary licenses to manufacture these drugs on a massive scale and sold them at prices they determined. In the case of Gilead, which placed more products in the patent pool than any other producer, their licenses required the licensee to pay Gilead a royalty of 3% of the sales of the drug and limit sales to low-income countries. This effort brought down the price of key AIDS medications in these countries. Most significantly, tenofovir, a first-line treatment for HIV/AIDS, has come down in price from $200 $500 per person per year to $39 per person per year in low-income countries now that 13 India-based pharmaceutical companies are producing it. Context of health emergency. It is also possible for governments to issue what are called compulsory licenses, which override patent rights to allow local production or import of drugs by generic manufacturers in the event of a public health crisis. Since 2003, this right has been enshrined in the Doha Declaration addendum to the WTO's TRIPS agreement, and this is what India and South Africa are lobbying for, having recently been joined by the United States, though not as of yet the European Union, EU. The Doha Addendum, Section 5C, offers AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis as examples of what qualifies as a health emergency. By this standard, COVID-19 should easily qualify. In fact, not invoking Doha exemptions in this unprecedented health crisis would make this agreement meaningless. We may thus find compulsory licenses being issued in several countries for vaccines and treatments for COVID-19, although manufacturers in India say they prefer to work with voluntary licenses because there is more goodwill between companies, while compulsory licenses often come with a legal battle brought by the patent holder. Voluntary licenses also enable production to begin more expeditiously, as they usually are accompanied by technology transfer, meaning that the patent holder reveals to the licensee how to manufacture the medication, sparing the licensee the lengthy and costly process of figuring out how to reverse engineer the product. The COVAX option. Some favor ensuring access to COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX program, which was established to purchase vaccine doses and donate them to low-income countries but does not involve modifying patent rights. Similar ventures during the AIDS crisis were chronically underfunded and had only minor effects on that pandemic compared to the voluntary licensing and mass production of antiretroviral drugs from Indian producers. COVAX is also currently underfunded, and the Director General of WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, warned that people in the lowest income countries might have to wait until 2022 to get vaccinated through this program, which may actually be optimistic since COVAX has shipped around 68 million doses so far. Similar concerns to those presented here were raised in last year's annual meeting of WHO, which established a patent sharing pool for COVID products, the COVID-19 Technology Access Pool. So far, no patent holders have joined this effort, which is why India and South Africa called on the WTO to temporarily waive patent protections for COVID-19. Meanwhile, the UN Medicines Patent Pool stands ready to accept voluntary licenses, having added a placeholder for COVID-19 on the list of diseases they address. Hopefully, the EU will join the efforts by India and South Africa at the WTO, and pharmaceutical producers will realize, as some did during the AIDS pandemic, that voluntary licensing comes with better public relations and that they are not going to make money off low-income countries regardless of patent enforcement. A key step. Furthermore, the billions of dollars in government aid given to companies to help develop COVID-19 treatments should entail an obligation to enable the mass production of affordable vaccines. After all, as legal scholars have long explained, patents are not ironclad ownership rights. They are a temporary contract that balances the public interest with the claims of the innovator. This is not just a question of social justice and ensuring life-saving therapies are available to the world's poor. It is a necessary step to prevent deadlier, more contagious and possibly vaccine-resistant variants of COVID-19 from proliferating in an under-vaccinated world. Murphy Halliburton, Professor of Medical Anthropology at Queen's College and the Graduate Center, City University of New York, is the author of India and the Patent Wars, Pharmaceuticals in the New Intellectual Property Regime.
Vending virus village.
Invading virus, ill-equipped villages. With the discovery of several bodies in and near the Ganga, serious concerns have been raised on the extent to which COVID-19 has made inroads into the rural areas of Uttar Pradesh. Omar Rashid reports on the state's efforts to ramp up facilities in villages where the health infrastructure is poor. Ganga has revealed the truth, exclaims Vishwambharnath Mishra, head priest of the Sanket Merchant Temple in Varanasi. Located in the heart of the ancient city, the temple is where the faithful come to seek an end to their problems. But the region has been witness to a grisly sight over the past week. Semi-decomposed and bloated bodies have been found floating in the sacred river. Mishra, who is also a professor at the Indian Institute of Technology (BHU), says this indicates that the COVID-19 situation in rural Uttar Pradesh is far worse than it appears. Ever since the bodies were discovered, police personnel have been patrolling the waters and ghats. They have set up pickets in at least 7 districts and even offered a support sum of 5,000 rupees to those who cannot afford wood for cremation, to dissuade them from immersing bodies in rivers. The state police have so far admitted to having found 44 bodies floating in the rivers, mainly the Ganga, in the districts of Baliar, Chandaule, Ghazipur, Varanasi, Hamirpur, and Kanpur. For residents of Ghazipur, where the bodies were first spotted in UP, the sight was shocking. Balwant Singh Bala of Gahama village says he has never seen anything like this before. We are used to bodies floating in the river once in a while. But this time we knew that there was something very grave happening, he says. A senior police officer, who led the cleanup of the ghats with lime powder, agrees. UP is officially yet to acknowledge that all or some of these were COVID-19 victims. Many observers suspect that these bodies could be of COVID-19 victims who were abandoned or disposed of in the waters by families due to lack of money for cremations, the waiting lines at cremation grounds, or the social stigma attached to the disease. Speculation intensified when countless shallow graves were found on the ghats of the Ganga in some districts, including Unnao, Prayagraj, Kannauj, and Raebareli. At the Buxar Ghat in Unnao, cleaners, priests, locals and attendants of the dead say that the bodies have been cremated and buried there according to customs. In April, when the wave was at its peak, the number of bodies arriving at the ghat for final rites reached 70 to 80 a day against the daily figure of 15 to 20. Those who could not afford to buy wood and fuel for cremation chose to bury the dead, they say. Since there is no way of knowing whether the bodies in the river are of COVID-19 victims, the question of uncounted COVID-19 deaths in the state still hangs in the air.
तो फ्रेंड्स आप लोग डीप में पेपर से पढ़ लीजिएगा क्योंकि बहुत ज़्यादा समय ऐसी पर्सनल ग्रांटर्स लेवल 4 कॉर्पोरेट डेब्ट्स 13 Naxal killed in Maharashtra. Activity in Tibet after Bastar firing. To 120-year-old inspires an entire Jammu and Kashmir village. Grants bill to YSRPC MP Raju. SC faces GST on oxygen concentrator. Public to probe killing of dogs in New Zealand. Center wards manipulate media tag of toolkit tweets.
Center wants manipulated media tag of toolkit tweets. Order follows labeling of tweet by Sambit Putra. Special correspondent, New Delhi. Hours after a tweet by Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, national spokesperson Sambit Putra on the alleged Congress toolkit was labeled as manipulated media, The union government has asked Twitter to remove the tag for tweets on toolkit to defame government's COVID-19 efforts as the matter is pending investigation before a law enforcement agency. The Ministry of Electronics and IT has written a strong communication to the global team of Twitter, registering its objection to the use of manipulated media tag on certain tweets made by Indian political leaders with reference to a toolkit created to undermine, derail and demean the efforts of the government against the COVID-19 pandemic, a ministry source said. The government has asked Twitter to remove the tags affixed prejudicially to certain tweets in recent days in the interests of fairness and equity. Investigation will determine the veracity of the content, not Twitter, the source stated. On Thursday, the microblogging website flagged a May 18 tweet by Mr. Patra as manipulated media. As per Twitter's policy, content may be labeled as manipulated media or in some cases removed, if the company has a reason to believe that media, or the context in which media are presented, are significantly and deceptively altered or manipulated. 2. Stand validated. The Congress stand has been validated by this Twitter action itself. What the Congress has been telling for the last so many days, so many years about BJP's false propaganda and spreading lies is actually validated by this single incident itself, Congress General Secretary K.C. Venugopal said, addressing an online press conference. The action by Twitter proves forgery of the highest order. The world should see and realize how India's ruling party is playing fraud in the middle of a pandemic, the party's senior spokesperson, Pawan Khera, said.
Can very death toll or 60. Israel Hamas reached truce after 11 days of fighting.
Israel-Hamas reached truce after 11 days of fighting. This includes 66 children, with more than 1,900 wounded and critical infrastructure damaged as well as thousands of homes. In Israel, the military said a soldier had been killed as well as 12 civilians. Hundreds have been treated for injuries in rocket salvos that caused panic and sent people rushing into shelters as far away as Tel Aviv. Palestinians who had huddled in fear of Israeli shelling poured into Gaza's streets, embracing one another in celebration in front of bombed-out buildings. Mosque loudspeakers feted the victory of the resistance achieved over the occupation. Israel. Cars driving around East Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah at dawn flew Palestinian flags and honked horns, echoing the scenes in Gaza. In the countdown to the 2 a.m. ceasefire, Palestinian rocket salvos continued and Israel carried out at least one airstrike. Egypt said it would send 2 delegations to monitor it as the warring parties said they were ready to retaliate for any violations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the operation had hit the ability of Hamas, the Islamist group which runs Gaza, to launch missiles at Israel. Hamas however cast the fighting as successful resistance to a militarily and economically stronger foe.
India should push hard to get as many people possible. Organize the extraordinary life.
Bahuguna's simply extraordinary life. Apart from his environmental contributions, he gave us a wealth of ground truths. Ashish Kotri. I first met him in 1979. As a group of youngsters beginning our journey into ecological issues, Chipko was already a legend, a movement to draw inspiration from. At a meeting in Delhi, Sundarlal Bahuguna spoke quietly but firmly about the havoc being caused by deforestation and road construction in the Himalayas, and of the resolve of villagers to stop this madness. His sing-song voice, his Gurwali phrases, the mix of cold science and grassroots wisdom in his arguments for why the Himalayan ecosystems had to be saved, the simplicity of his appearance, all these served to create a deep impression. 42 years later, the imprint he made on my mind and heart has been molded and shaped by countless other women and men who have braved the odds to protect India's environment from destructive development, including the women of Chipko on the front lines of saving Himalayan forests, whom we, as members of Kalpavriksha, met on treks through Tehri Garhwal in 1980-81. But like the seeds we carry within us from our parents, some original voices and personalities do not disappear even after decades. Sandalji's is one such. Lots will be said about his contributions, the campaign to save Himalayan forests resulting in a ban on commercial felling above 30 degrees slope and above 1000 MSL, mean sea level, in 1981, the movement against the Tehri Dam, a mega project with devastating consequences due to submergence, tree felling, displacement, and possible seismic impacts, unsuccessful even after Sandalji undertook one of India's longest fasts after independence, over 56 days, and after an expert committee appointed by the central government said it should not be built. His support for women-led movements against the liquor mafia in the hills, and for the Beach Bachao Andolan, a movement to save Himalayan agricultural biodiversity from being wiped out by the chemical-intensive Green Revolution, the untiring awareness campaigns across India and the world, including a jaw-dropping Kashmir to Kohima Pad Yatra, foot march, in the early 1980s to bring attention to the entire Himalayan region, and even before much of this, with his wife Vimlaji, who was in his own words one of his strongest inspirations, the freedom movement and struggles against untouchability and caste discrimination. The list of contributions can go on. But what I would like to remember him for is his personality. He was gentle, quietly persuasive, firmly strong in his beliefs and arguments, with occasional bouts of anger quickly left behind and replaced by his infectious smile. He showed delight in interacting with children and youth, charming them with the kind of open laughter only mountain people are capable of, giving them simple nuggets of wisdom. Like his mentor Gandhiji, he had the ability to come up with pithy one-liners, such as ecology is permanent economy. And in the simplicity of his lifestyle, he was always clad in khadi, ate sparsely but healthily, no frills, and lived the life he preached. In his insistence on ecology being the foundation of everything, and development being anything but development if it does not respect this, Sandalji gave us a wealth of ground truths. Given the deepening chasm between India's governance and these ground truths, the hubris-filled Chardham and hydroelectricity projects in the Himalayas as painful manifestations, and his own health situation, which had been worsening even before COVID-19 struck, perhaps it is just as well that he does not have to live through these traumatic times. His was a life well lived, and it is up to us to learn from it and continue struggling for ecological sanity. The author is with Kalpavriksha and Vikalp Singham in Pune.
Jaishankar to meet Blinken, UN chief.
Jaishankar to meet Blinken, UN chief. He is also expected to meet US manufacturers on procurement of vaccines. Sahasini Haidar, New Delhi. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will travel to the United States next week to discuss bilateral issues and COVID-related cooperation, the ministry announced on Friday. Mr. Jaishankar will travel to New York and Washington in a visit scheduled from May 24 to 28, and will meet UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Mr. Jaishankar is also expected to meet American vaccine manufacturers, and discussions are expected to focus on commercial procurement of vaccine doses from industry, including Pfizer, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, as well as gifts of extra doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine that the US plans to share with other countries. The External Affairs Minister will have two interactions with business forums on economic and COVID-related cooperation between India and the US, the ministry said. Mr. Jaishankar is expected to meet business representatives at the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, OSISP, and the US-India Business Council, OSIBC, during the visit. In recent weeks, both groups have formed a global task force on pandemic response along with the US Chamber of Commerce to work on several, including provision of 1,000 ventilators required by hospitals in India, 25,000 oxygen concentrators, and coordination of human resources executives in India and the US. Meeting CEOs. Industry sources said Mr. Jaishankar would address a roundtable with CEOs of various vaccine and pharmaceutical companies, where US manufacturers are keen to discuss a more centralized procurement, rather than the current state-by-state mechanism, and would like to see India grant emergency use authorization for the US vaccines soon. Mr. Jaishankar is expected to make a stop at the United Nations, his first visit since India assumed its two-year term at the Security Council this January. Officials said the meeting with Mr. Guterres would focus on a range of issues, expected to include India's efforts against the pandemic, the Afghanistan talks process, where India plays a role as chair of Taliban Sanctions Committee at the UNSC, the violence between Israel and Palestine, and UN reforms.
The case accused now under house arrest. SII unresponsive to states, says Chhattisgarh Health Minister. Pandemic has made country more self-seeking, Jaishankar. SE stage SE order to UP Healthcare. 1.3 billion doses a realistic estimate. You must act rather than talk Congress. 1.49 lakh cases and 4,031 death recorded. Of gratitude. Clashes erupt in East Jerusalem after case fires comes into effect. What did Israel achieve in Gaza? With no worry, Indians might do extraordinary well. No official request for test raid. Chelsea and top players locked in a pay dispute. WTC is like World Cup, Umesh. CIFI announced financial help. Doctor who led AFI fight against doping passes away. Tokyo Games will go ahead even if there is a state of emergency. IOCBB quotes. Bala wrestling her time in Scotland. Miraj delighted to be training with Neo. Ashok to officiate इन टोक्यो ओलंपिक्स। कुछ भारद्वाज पासेस हुए। फ्रेंड्स, आज का हम लोग का पेपर पढ़ने का समय समय समाप्त होता है, और बाकी सब, यदि आप पेपर को डीप में और पढ़ना चाहते हैं तो पर डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में दिए गए लिंक पर करके पेपर डाउनलोड करके पढ़ सकते हैं। और यदि आप चैनल पर नए हैं तो चैनल सब्सक्राइब करें और चैनल को सपोर्ट करें। पर डे यहाँ पर न्यूज़ पेपर की टाइम पर आता रहता है, यानी कुछ देर में हम लोग 5-10 में न्यूज़ पेपर ला देंगे। पर डे आप लोग यहाँ से न्यूज़ पेपर पढ़ सकते हैं।